Snail says she's in pain. Jumbo Josh is injected with givenium. And at that time I was dying more than 100 times and finally collected for you all the secrets of the second part of the Banban kindergarten. Let's check if you know them. Let's go. Let's start with the deaths. As in the first part, after the defeat, a letter appears on the screen. And I managed to collect such a number of screenshots where there were only 8 letters, but as I did not try to compose a complete phrase, I did not succeed. And do not think that I was looking badly, I began to resort to the help of relatives, neurons, YouTube. It turns out to be gibberish, and even it would seem that such a proposal is actually absolutely illiterate and does not fit here. What do the letters mean after death? If in the first part of the game I deciphered them easily, then in this one I do not yet imagine it possible. Who still thinks that the stain on Jumbo Josh's arm is blood? Givenium flows in the veins of all monsters. It inflates the veins and hurts the whole body, but it performs the functions of blood and gives creatures a painful life. In addition, many givenium creatures are aggressive. But then what is the stain on Jumbo's hand? Personally, it reminds me of paint, and there is no more detailed information in the game. By the way, about givenium, we can meet him in barrels, in Captain's Vitals, and even smeared on the floor at the crash site of Jumbo Josh. And one more thing, I can't guarantee that this is % true, but it looks like after the attack on us, Banban dragged Jumbo Josh to the medical center and treated him. Yes, it may well be, although the traces of givenium break off into the abyss. But who knows what other moves there are, and after all, the trail continues already in the medical center itself. It's strange that he reaches into a boarded-up room. Did you know that in the game for a reason the locations are divided into zones: medical center, test, and communication center? The monsters were modified and treated in the medical center, and their behavior and reaction were checked in the test sector. By the way, that's why there's a school and Parker, and yes, Parker was intended for monsters, and alerts on the walls urged not to push. In the communication center, employees gathered and performed paperwork at office desks. They had a dining room and a mini conference room. Here presumably is the office of Uthman behind the red door. It's not difficult to get there, but you need to go through half the game after the room with the task from Flynn to pick up the fireworks. Bring it to the medical center, reload the cannon from which we scared off the giant vitals, and a little secret will appear. Without a cannon shot, it is impossible to pass through it because of the barrier. Remember the ticket in the first part of the game. Now I know that Dr. Uthman is the main founder of the image of all the monsters of the Banban kindergarten. And the fact that this is his office indicates letters addressed to him, as well as a magnetic board with the existing creatures. Perhaps they wanted to throw out Sheriff Tud and Spider after all. Alas, I do not know what the number 56 means. And there will be a few details about Dr. Uthman today. For example, you already guessed that he was in charge here, and of course he had a high rating. Employee rating, what everyone hated. The employees with the highest rating could go home earlier and come back later, while the employees with the worst rating had to plow like bees to be appreciated by their superiors. The color of the tables corresponds to the rating mark, but I didn't notice any direct connection in the brightness of the shade and the magnitude of the rating. Although Banban says that the color of the tables is different specifically to remind workers about the rating, but both red and blue can be bad. So maybe the developers got something wrong. For me it was not really possible to remember some barely distinguishable shade and the figure related to it. I'm sorry about that. What were the Opila's paws stained with in the first part? With the release of the second part, we learned about the existence of givenium, a blood substitute for the residents of the kindergarten. But why are there traces of a red bird rising from the abyss on the wall in the first part of the game? There are two options. Either the whole idea with givenium appeared to the developers later, which is the least likely as for me, or it's not Opila's blood, then who? An interesting situation with Opila's chicks. The fact is that cases belonging to chicks are known. One of them has a non-standard color scheme. This is confirmed by a blue chick with a red beak. And also each of the chicks has a seam on the back. These individuals were created specifically for the Opila, and it does not attack them, because they have childish qualities. But then why do we collect 6 eggs for the Opila in the first part, you ask? Yes, by the head, I will answer. And there are not 6 but 7 eggs, One is hidden in the ball pit attraction, and 6 chicks, 6 cases, and one of non-standard colors. An interesting fact is that some of the cases that we encounter in the game can be found. These are Givanium, Opila, mention of cases of chicks, mention of Jumbo Josh, Banban, Captain's Fiddles. And missing cases Snail, Celine, Spider, Nabnab, Sheriff Toad, Banbalena, Stinger, Flynn. Maybe we'll see them in the third part. Banban was created using the genome of Dr. Uthman. And why am I singling it out as a separate secret, or rather even a fact? The fact is that Ban, for some reason, perhaps because of the intelligence of his genome donor, Dr. Uthman, is the most adequate monster of all. He willingly went to cooperate with scientists, not knowing his origin, and thought that his name was Uthman. When the real Dr. Uthman was presented to him, and tried to explain the situation, he attacked his donor, and no longer wanted to talk to anyone except one person. And let's check if you know who we are talking about. By the way, an interesting fact. In one of the notes to Dr. Uthman, someone, I assume Waverly Mason, writes that he is afraid of Nabnab. And if that's the case, then Banbalena, who in theory is the recipient of the genome from Waverly Mason, will also be afraid of him. It is possible to confirm or deny this if there is this information in the next part of the game. This is the alphabet counting and the cycle of kindness. They're a little weird, so it's hard when they're drawn here before all the bad stuff or after. I'm not sure if people did it. For example, the cycle of kindness goes like kindness, betrayal, sadness, and evil. It is noteworthy that kindness falls out of the cycle, and the betrayal of disappointment and evil endlessly go in a circle. Oh, yes, the school of Banbalena is a real mini school of life. To some extent, this graph improves the condition of the inhabitants of the gardens. The account or multiplication table is written non-standard, has 8 operations, and instead of the final result, after the equal sign, a word consisting of a Banban and some number is written. I had just like my nickname, Banban, Banbanmo, the Banbani, Banbanor, the Banbaniv, the Banbanix, the Banbaneven, the Banbanate. Unusually specific arithmetic, the alphabet of 3 letters. DF, by the way, sounds a bit like death. Well, it's probably a coincidence. The alphabet indicates needs or abilities. Flay is peel the skin right, eat and drink, and it's a little strange. There are only 3 letters, although there are much more of them in the count table. Maybe this alphabet is a kind of rule, like BIOB, bring your own beer. This school is not only informative, but also very fun. After all, the students here are watering cans, balls, and Skittles. Why is everything like in a madhouse, you ask? Well, I have a theory on this. Most likely, this school was a kind of test area for Banbalena, including where she had to be tested, as befits a future teacher-educator. Therefore, watering cans with pins and balls were used to create the atmosphere. But this is only one of my versions. I will dedicate a separate video to Banbalena, believe me, she deserves it. By the way, a basketball is playing truant behind the classroom, and he asks us not to complain about him for chewing gum. We see the same ball at the end of the game and the offended text that we still complained about it, and the ball was punished. And the pins behind the classroom prevent us from escaping at all. And if you let a Banbalena in here, it will be impossible to move them. Some kind of telepathy. But in the usual scenario, when we get into the corridor, they suddenly appear closer. Does someone put them on or not? I think it's more a joke from the developers, not tied to what is happening in the game. Perhaps you are wondering what was going on in the communication center before our visit. At the beginning of the game, as in the first part, we see a short recording of rare pictures in which something is happening. One by one, tables disappear from the dining room. We see the same tables as a barricade under the stairs on the way to the communication center. And there is also an inscription about a spider. It's not entirely clear what happened here. A note is glued to the tables stating that the spider is real. And it is written many times. It looks crazy, don't you think? Why write it many more times on the wall? Perhaps the spider escaped and the employees needed a temporary shelter. But why was it necessary to pull out the tables here? Wouldn't it be easier to lock yourself in a room? There is also an interesting card reader with a signature about the alarm system. And at the beginning of the recording from the cameras, it is extinguished as if activated, and then it lights up again as if it can be activated again. But no matter how I tried to replay the game, I couldn't use it. Maybe he's here for the future. Then a cake suddenly appears on the record. We see this cake when we visit the dining room for the first time, and this cake suddenly disappears around the second half of the game after the Banban attack on us. And we meet the same cake already at the end of the game. but with golden figures of a Banban and Banbaleena standing in a kind of dance. And who brought it here? I think Banban, the green blockhead, wouldn't have had the brains. Fashionable hats are lying all over the kindergarten, some open as the game progresses, for example a cool hat in the final, which looks like a top hat. The propeller hat is located near the secret in the medical center behind the giant Captain Fiddles. She can be picked up as soon as we scare off the mutant. Another hat is hidden so that you won't find it right away in the radiator or fan in the zone of little chicks. Another top hat is hidden on an umbrella in Stinger Flynn's room. We get cool points automatically for joining cool students at the Banbalena school, and the rest of the hats are already automatically opened. This is a Santa hat, a festive hat, and a cowboy hat. And while we're on the subject of hats, the Banban has festive caps covering its terrifying horns, and interestingly, because this monster reads like a Banban only the other way around, the spider Nabnab also has a festive cap, albeit of a different color. Interesting fashion, however. And to our chagrin, Nabnab is much worse than Banban because you can't even talk to him. And besides, he's been following us all game. A kind of mini secret, because not everyone will go back to the madhouse from which they escaped, only real problem seekers on their own head. But the spider Nabnab does not stay in the warehouse forever and returns for us at the end of the game. After defeating Banbalena, if you suddenly decide to go back. Yeah. And here's our scary friend. Why are you following us? You don't seem to need food. And he's not alone here. Because everyone on YouTube has already said about this joke. So what? They said how they spat. When we go down, a slippery infection called a snail of some kind of horseradish crawls to the elevator. Unbelievably, it seems that after Banbalena, everyone rushed in pursuit. And what? So the video about the secrets turns into another analysis of the plot. Well, I can't help but say that even before the chase, the Banban says very strange and interesting things, among which is the phrase, "It's almost assembly time," where all of the doors open, so we must keep this brief. We add a cake to this. Looks like we ruined someone's party. But it's better not to trust him. Don't trust yet. After all, the words that he knows that we came here for the child are a real manipulation. Well, they came and came. And what do you want? Damn red. I feel the third chapter will be hot. By the way, few people know, but if, before going to the technical room to get a blue card, contact the Banban cameras, then nothing will happen, and it will not work again. This means that the Banban just left right before we went to get the blue card. That means he's already running here to catch us when we get back. That's such a tricky Banban. Banbalena and Banban consider themselves people. This reveals some phrases as well as the fact that the memories of genome donors are transmitted to Givenium creatures. What does the name Zolfius mean to you? The same villain who is hiding somewhere below, as most players assume, and I am inclined to the same version. He or part of him can be seen on the way from the medical center, but once you open the passage to the test sector, it disappears. This thing makes sounds like a real trumpet. You must have noticed that the spider Nabnab is depicted separately from the full Banban family. However, in the final chase, he also moves along the Opila bird alley like a Banban, Jumbo Josh, and Snail Silent. I think even though he is a hermit, he is still at one with the monsters. Secret phrases of the snail, which, well, in principle, are not very secret. However, if you stay in the corridor and do not run away to the saving door, you can hear two more very interesting phrases. Even somehow it was a shame for the snail, someone promised her something there. By the way, this is the third known talking character in the game so far. And you can hear Snail at Banbalena's last lesson.
This class is going to be great! I can feel it! Wait, what was that?
She says, "Hello," it's like there's someone else in the hallway. Banbalena goes to check. What's going on there? I wonder if the snail was talking to the Opila or Opila had already left at that moment and someone else came. You must have noticed the surgical stitches on the backs of the kindergarten monsters. No, then take a look. All monsters have stitches, only Opila has it on its stomach, but chicks have it on their backs. The Banban should also have this seam, even though I couldn't see it. But it is he who confirms additional surgical interventions, as well as conditioning before bone marrow transplantation. By the way, you can see this seam at Banbalena's if you approach her in the dark. She won't touch us even though it's scary. You can find 2 cassettes in the game. Everyone knows the first one very well, and what happens on it becomes clear from the name of this video file in the game catalog, as well as from the case 6 known as Banban. Here Banban is being held in solitary confinement after attacking Dr. Uthman. But fewer players already know about the second record, because to watch it you need to go back through Parker back to the board, and by the way, if you die in the interval of the game from the first to the second cassette, only first will be visible on the screen. But there is a second way again from the game catalog you can view this file, and it is called injection. I think you've guessed what's going on in the video. If anything, I told you in more detail in the analysis of the plot. This should be the next video. Per codes in this part are decrypted in text. One warns not to trust jellyfish. That is, apparently, it means a stinger flynn. Another says they can't be alive, and this is repeated many times, and another one just says that there is no perfect kindergarten. As if a hint of the impossibility of bringing Dr. Uthman's ideas to life. Did mom or dad Opila I used to call her dad. Well, because it was funnier that way, and the bird looked kind of stoned. In general, judging by the case 10 to which Opila belongs, she has maternal instincts, which means that she is still a mother. And at the same time the publications of developers on holidays, which is very rare for such a tiny studio, confirm this, and it also turns out that the snail is also female. Right. All found notes have names and can be seen in the main menu of the game, so you can learn more about the purpose of some letters. For example, a friendly letter makes it clear that it was most likely written by Waverly in order to reassure a friend. Banban and Banbaleena have strong forearms. Well, it's just that it catches my eye all the time. With such powerful forearms, you can hang on a horizontal bar all day. They must have a deadly grip. And did you understand who Banban wanted to talk to? Not yet, and I will tell you about this in the analysis of the plot. And perhaps everything. I thought for a long time what to throw out of these facts from the video, but in the end I decided to leave it as it is. Let it come out a little thin. I hope you liked it. This is Bombactus World. Subscribe and see new videos, baby.